Christy has a site that's been regularly pulling in over $3,000 per month, with almost half of that revenue coming from affiliate marketing, and the other half is coming from display ads. Last December, her site hit $5,000 thanks to the retail season, and she also has an email list of about 2,000 subscribers. And it's a pretty small, obscure niche. I didn't even know it really existed. And she's working with me on a case study to double the revenue for the site. And I sat down with Christy to get an update, and this is month number 2. I also want to let you know I'm launching a new email marketing course, and it's perfect for you if you've been struggling to get people to sign up for your email list. Maybe you're trying to figure out what to write in your emails, and maybe you've been waiting until you have a product or offer to sell, something like that. Or maybe you're just not sure where to start with email marketing. So if you want to get started with email marketing and you need a push, this course is for you. There's a link in the description so you can check it out. Be sure to check out the update that Christy wrote over on my blog, Niche Site Project, and let's get over to the interview. Hey, Christy, how's it going? We're getting an update from you for, I guess it's mid-February right now, but we'll get a take on what's going on. So how are you today?
Doing pretty well. I told you we're up to about 20 degrees and it's like summertime now. So feels great. Adjusted expectations.
Yeah, and we just got a little snow, but it's so much warmer here in Colorado than it was in Montana. So you adjust pretty quickly to warmer weather.
Yeah. Well, you adjust pretty quickly to the colder weather too, and you end up just working. So lots of progress to share.
So what is going on with your site? Can you give us just an update on the, I guess, number of posts, number of visitors, and of course the revenue?
Sure. So for February, what I do every month is I don't check any of the stats until the 15th. That's my model. I kind of feel like before that it's demotivational. So I like to wait till the 15th when there's some actual stuff happening. So when I checked on the 15th, we were up to like 1,700 in revenue for the month so far, first half. And that was a like almost exact 50-50 split between Amazon affiliates and ads. So those two were pretty even. And then so far for half of the month, it's about 40,000 visitors. And all of that is with about 375 posts.
Great. And where is that as far as what you expected or projected for February? Are you tracking along where you thought you would be?
So far, it's tracking about the same, maybe a little over what January was. January was a little skimpy because that is, as I have learned, the lowest month for ads of the year. So ad revenue was down by several $100s last month, but it's now trending back up. So yeah, I think we're right about on par for what I'd expect.
Okay. And the way we'll format this discussion is kind of what you've been up to. And if people are just tuning in, this is the second update for your case study where you're essentially trying to double the revenue for your site. And we're taking a different approach than what we might typically do, which is just double the content or 10x the content and then hope that you can get more revenue that way.
That's what I expected.
Which is a good strategy, but that is also the most common route. And it's a little easier to do than coming up with your own products and building the brand even more. So we're going to go through kind of the progress. We have some questions that we'll address and kind of see where it leads. There's a few things that hopefully you're going to teach me about. So we'll flip it around a little bit, but let's get into some of the content. So I know I just said we're not going to try to 10x the content or anything like that, but we do want to add more content. So what were you able to get done and where are you tracking this month?
Sure. So January and February were more kind of prep months as far as content goes. So I spent a lot of time making outlines for other writers. So some people do that, some people don't do that. Some people just say, here's the topic, here's the word count, like go to it. That's fine. I'm a little too control freak for that. So I built about 50 outlines in the last couple of weeks for writers to do a content sprint. So that's how I'm going to do it this year, is by doing ideally 2 content sprints. having 50 posts in the first one and probably about 25 in the second one that I would do like late summer, early fall in prep for holiday traffic. So out of that, I've so far gotten about 12 new posts live. And we'll talk about this probably a little bit later, but just as far as focusing those pieces of content, I'm doing them a little bit more as clusters for various topics instead of what I've done before, which is literally just pull out like good search phrases that I find. So now I'm actually trying to say, okay, where are the topics that have the most potential? And then let's do some clusters around those topics. So that's what I'm trying this time.
Perfect. How much detail do you put into your outlines? For example, how long are they?
My outlines are probably a page and a half. I always list out my own section of FAQs. So I want to make sure that all the FAQs are actual search phrases that are useful and related. So I always do that. And I usually have all of the main headers in there as well.
Okay.
So it takes some time, but then I end up getting something I think is more valuable. So.
Okay. So people can imagine if they just wrote up the subheadings and then the FAQ section, they'd essentially have the outline for the writer. So it takes a little time, but if you're well-versed in the topic, in the niche in general. So it's probably slightly interesting and you probably kind of know how to put together the content.
And my thing is this, that if I'm going to spend money to have someone else write, then I want to make sure what I get back matters to Google. So that's the whole point for me.
And speaking of content and making sure it's in the right shape, you started using MarketMuse based on my recommendation, which is great. I made friends with some of the founders there, which is cool. So how's it been going with MarketMuse? It's a kind of a beast of a tool. And I'm curious of your impression so far.
Well, that was definitely my impression so far initially. So as soon as I logged in and basically it loaded up every page of my site into what they call the inventory. And I was just like, that's a lot of data, right? So it was a little bit of an overwhelm, but I was also pretty excited because it was data that I can't get out of Google Analytics or Search Console or things like that. So with MarketMuse, I can get page level detail. I can also get topics that I'm ranking for. I can look at things like personalized difficulty scores, which is, a MarketMuse tool basically that they came up with to tell you where you're more likely to be able to rank than other people. So those are some cool pieces of data that I haven't had before. But again, when you have, nearly 400 blog posts, that's a whole lot of data. So definitely in the sifting through phase.
Sure. I'm kind of in the same boat. And for the people that don't know, MarketMuse is, in my opinion, the market leader for on-page optimization and content analysis. There's probably some other buzzwords you could throw in there that describes what the tool can do. There's several use cases, and typically, at least in the past, up until the last, I would say 6 months or a year or so, MarketMuse was targeted at big content companies. So like newspapers or huge websites with a big staff, or content marketing companies that had a bunch of writers and they were publishing a lot of content for companies, and they can afford, $1,000 plus per month just for one tool. So when I got the demo years ago, it was out of my price range. I was bootstrapping my situation, and it's the price of, a mortgage for a house.
Right.
So a little too expensive for most people until they realize there's a big market for folks that can't pay as much. So they've scaled down the tool in certain ways. It's actually still super effective. And I think part of that is through the technology, and they improved their systems and they're able to do more with the same computing power or something. I'm not really sure. I'm putting words into their mouth. Anyway, MarketMuse is great. It is very powerful. and it's so powerful that there's a bit of a learning curve. So
Right.
the customer support is very good. They're experts with the tool, but have you had, I guess, what was it like learning how to use it?
Yeah. So I've worked in tech for a decade before doing all of this and still have a bunch of tech clients from my other companies. So I always try to be the person who tries to learn a little bit at least before I contact customer support, just because it seems like the right thing to do. So I took like all of their academy classes in like one evening. I was just like, I'm doing it. So I took like six, online free courses that they have to just like get going so that I knew what the terminology was. Like, I need to know what personalized difficulty score is. I don't know what that is. So I did that. And then the next day, I reached out to customer support and was like, hey, can you just like cross check that what I'm thinking is the right thing to do based on this data is the right thing to do? And I literally walked her through like, here's what I'm seeing. I built this dashboard. Here's what I think it means that I should do next. Like, is that right? Because I didn't want to drop like 2 weeks of, hardcore time doing the wrong stuff with the wrong data. So I did it more as like a double check to be like, am I getting the point of this correctly? And luckily I was, but I just felt like that was really nice that she would, chat with me for 20 minutes and be like, yes, I'm following along with you. And I agree. That is what you should do.
Good. Well, and as I've told you before, you're a great student. So you took those courses and you understood what they were trying to teach. So that's great. I am probably using the same module as you. I know Optimize is probably the module where I'm going to spend a lot of time just because I'm trying to improve content over on Niche Site Project and a couple of my other
Right.
sites where I've published content. I know it's probably a little bit off. So with Optimize, from my understanding, you can get some tips on essentially what keywords and other phrases to use in your content so you can tweak it and essentially change words. So number one, is that right? Did I get that? And then I know you've talked to the president over at MarketMuse. So tell us about Optimize a little bit.
Sure. So I was really impressed. So like when you introduced me to the founder, who I know has many, many things to be doing, he and I traded probably 5, 10 messages just with me being like, here's some of the stuff I'm doing. Here's what I'm using. Is there anything else you think I should be doing? Again, trying to be, a good steward of his time, but still, if I have the opportunity, I'm going to say, hey, do you think I'm getting the most value out of what I'm doing? And I was really impressed that he would take the time and write back and give me like real answers. And that was great. So that left me with good vibes. What I am primarily using is the Optimize application is what they call it, for the same reason that, you and I have a lot of existing content, and it feels like that is a good place to try to get like the extra 10% improvement versus the enormous feat that is making new content, right? So while I'm doing a small sprint, I also have like 370 posts that could probably be better. And if those get 5 or 10% better, then that's great. It's definitely worth something to me. So Optimize, basically, I kind of call it a video game. Like, it looks like a video game. So you can basically say, hey, I want to optimize this one post. It populates your post on the left. It populates a list of keywords or phrases on the right. And each one of them has a color attached to it, and like a number of times that you used it in your article and a number of times that they suggest that you use it. And so basically then you can go on the left, make adjustments to the text, and watch as like the video game matches the colors up. So you could be like, hey, I'm talking about basketball, and now I'm in trouble because I don't know anything about basketball. It's gonna be hard for me to make an analogy, but you could be like, I should use the word hoop 6 times and I've only used it 4 times. Or, hey, here's the topic about the best sneakers for basketball courts, and I haven't talked about that at all. So I should actually add an FAQ about that, or a new section or something like that. So that's kind of what Optimize is. And then the goal is that you would put those changes into WordPress, which is kind of manual, but we can talk about that.
Yep. And I experienced the same thing right before we started recording. I was telling you, yeah, I've been starting to use MarketMuse, and it's a lot. It is manual. You have to literally, change words. You have to read sentences, make sure it makes sense, maybe add a little section in there. So it is time consuming and detailed, but the benefits you can get are huge because you have a piece of content that's potentially doing well, or in my case, I think a few times it has ranked well in the past, but through neglect, other sites have published more up-to-date information. It's just out of date and it needs more content on there, more relevant content. So
well, the cool
it's going to
thing,
take time.
you probably saw this too when you were playing with it, is that MarketMuse has their own basically scoring system. So they'll give your piece a content score, and they'll give you a target content score. And essentially every time you make a tweak in your article, then you can watch as your content score gets higher, and ideally you get to that target, which is why I call it a video game. But it also gives you like target word count, which I think is really helpful. It's not always, like, what I've noticed is it's not always super accurate, in the sense that if you have a topic that you're trying to optimize, it may pull in other information that it thinks is relevant based on some adjacent topic. And so you really do have to like use your brain and be like, do these words make sense for my article? Or if it's telling me this should be 3,000 words longer, but it's already pretty long for what that is, probably it's, it's pulling from the entire internet. It's doing the best it can.
Right.
So you do still have to use your brain, but it gives you some cool data that you normally don't have.
Anything else with MarketMuse?
No, so far so good. The only thing I've noticed is I can't be doing all that manual optimization myself. So I did just start delegating it, which I was like, I don't want to pay for someone else to do it. Like, I could do it, but I don't want to be doing that when I could do other things that like only I can do. So constant trade-off. But
yeah, I will be in the same position too, where it's also not that fun to be honest with you, right?
I like the video game part, but I don't like moving it all over and doing all the stuff. So
yeah, and when you're first starting to use it, the video game part is interesting. I was like, oh yeah, like some things are turning green. That's
right.
Good. There's some other colors involved, and then quickly, once you get it,
by the 350th post, you're like, I'm not having fun anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not having fun.
Exactly. So moving on to digital products, and that's an area where we want to focus some time. I think that is probably a hugely profitable area. Things are going to have to be done. It's a whole sales funnel situation, but where are we at with the digital products?
Yeah, digital products, a little bit intimidating for me, simply because I've never done like the whole sales funnel thing. That's all new for me. The nice part is I do have traffic, so that's like the first piece, which I have. So for me, this month has been more prep work again. So it's trying to figure out, brainstorming a whole lot of ideas for what kinds of free digital products I could have, or lead magnets, or what kind of paid digital products I could have, like info products that stop short of like a course, right? But more things like guides or toolkits or things like that would be monetary, but still smaller than making your own like online course. So been brainstorming those. I went down a bit of a design rabbit hole, as you know, and for me, the way that I think is I have to like see something for it to be real. So I spent some time doing basically like a faux layout of what a typical guide could look like for this series that I envision, just because when I want to be able to hand it off to a writer and say, here's what I'm going for, I want them to have some idea what I'm talking about. And for me, like, that needs to be something visual. It's not the case for everyone. Maybe it wasn't the best use of my time, but it's so pretty. And I've now delegated one. So I'm waiting to get it back, and we'll see.
And this would be like for an ebook, right?
Right. That kind of
Okay.
thing.
A paid ebook.
Right.
Okay. And for context for people, before we started recording, we were chatting about what we were going to talk about. And I did mention to Christy, hey, we're getting ahead of ourselves just a little bit because really, and I've done many courses, really it's the title of the course, an outline of what it's going to be in there, and then you can go from there. The design is important, more important to some people than others, but essentially it's something that you could hire out. Like you could hire a designer to do it. You have skills in that area, and you sent me the template and it looked awesome, 100 times better than anything that I've put together. I can tell you that it's beautiful, right? But
Yeah.
the title and then the outline, most important thing. So with that said, do you have any ideas for the specific course or ebook that you're going to roll out?
So I basically, when I'm thinking to start for kind of a paid digital product, just shy of a course or an ebook. So I want to do that kind of later this year, build up to that. But I would like to do basically a series of these guides that are kind of to different topics or activities within my niche. Um, it's a little bit like you've talked before about bundling up content that you have, like there's value to that also. So part of that is what started this idea of being like, hey, we've covered some topics around this, but we don't have anywhere that it's all together. So just trying more so to be like, hey, you want to get into this thing? Well, here's, a 24-page guide that gives you the basics. Like you can just get an idea of what it is and if you might like doing that. So that's kind of where I'm going, because it's the kind of thing that once I have one, it would be a whole lot easier for me to delegate out to a group of writers I already know and work with all the time to do them for different activities. So that's kind of my goal, is to be like, we could make a suite of these things instead of starting from scratch every time. We'll see.
Perfect.
I don't know if it'll work out.
Perfect. It can work out. I don't know about this specific one or anything like that, but it definitely can work out. And for reference, I know I've purchased many of these things. I create courses, but I also buy a lot of them in info products. So I have purchased a copywriting 10-pager. It was a PDF. I think it looked pretty good, to our point of design, but they just used like PowerPoint or something and put it together. So it's a 10-pager. It hits the high points of copywriting, and it was one of the first ones that I purchased. It was $9, I think. And that, when we zoom out and think about a funnel, the person got me to sign up on the email list. I read a couple of blog posts. I thought the person was smart. He seemed competent. And then he put an offer out in front of me, and it was for the $9 ebook. And I bought that, and it gave me good information. And I didn't continue down this person's funnel, but the next thing was like a $600 full copywriting course that goes on for a few weeks. And
$9 to $600.
The thing is, though, I have rarely put this into place, but it's a huge trust builder to get someone to transact with you. So once they do that, then you're selling to a customer who's already worked with you, and there's some biases that help you sell things, because if someone's worked with you, they want to keep working with you, unless if you screw up or the content's bad, then it's not going to work out. But this works perfectly, and you can see how the funnel would work. And going in this order is very smart, because you could get excited, right? And you could think, hey, I'm going to make this huge flagship course. Maybe it takes you 6 months to put it together, and then you try to sell it and you miss the mark on what the market really wanted. So going this smaller route is a great way to figure out what's valuable to people. You're going to do a few of these smaller products, so you'll be able to test it out, and it'll be a smaller commitment of time. So perfect. Very good.
Well, and the other thing I'll just say on that is that, we've talked about like a lot of sites have an audience that comes back all the time, right? If they are following you as like a person, then maybe they come back all the time and read your blog and do all that. For me, it's more educational stuff. So a lot of my visitors are just new every time. They're just searching for one thing. So I think there's also value in doing the smaller offerings because they may just literally be visiting one page of my site. So getting them to engage, I don't necessarily have 15 times to do that. I have like one time to give them something pretty relevant. So at least in my mind, I'm like, well, if they're new people, then this gives me an easy way to engage with them a bit more. And every time a new person comes, then that's a different opportunity I have to get in front of them. So we'll see.
Okay. And as far as paid products and free, I know you had some questions about that. Anything specific?
Yeah. Well, I think, I'm still struggling a little bit with just where do you draw the line between what kind of tool is good for a paid offering versus a free offering. So I know that like the word lead magnet is what you would use for email list building, right? So it'd be the kind of thing where, and you do this on your site too, right? And I've downloaded them. You definitely have my email. And it's like, hey, get the calculator for this thing that you were reading about, or get the Excel template for this other thing that you were reading about, like things like that that are free but build your list. But I just struggle sometimes to be like, okay, but where is the line between where something has enough value that you would charge for it? So I don't know if you want to talk about that at all, but that's just something that now I'm getting into it. I'm kind of like, oh, I don't know where that line is all the time.
It's a tough one. Really, it's wherever you want it to be. And there are some areas that can make it easier for you to have a lead magnet that's perfect for the course that you're trying to sell or the product that you're trying to sell. So one way to look at it is if you can imagine your ebook
Mm-hmm.
and what you want to include in there, and if you can slice off a little piece of it that is really relevant, maybe one little section, maybe one little calculator or tool, or just a reference point where you can use that as the lead magnet. That's a great way to look at it. I encourage people to have lead magnets that are easily consumable so people get value quickly. You just mentioned sometimes people are going to look for one thing, they're going to land on your site and they're going to get it and then they're going to go away.
Mm-hmm.
If you can give them something that they can consume really quickly, that's much better, in my opinion, than giving them a 5-hour video course, right? It seems like a 5-hour video course would be so valuable, but the problem is who has 5 hours to
Right.
watch that? They need something that they can consume quickly and build trust with you even faster. So I love one pagers or 2 pagers max.
Okay.
That said, if you do have assets, right, you could put together a series of blog posts that are all on one topic
Mm-hmm.
and package them up into a PDF. And technically, you could sell that PDF, right? There's value in removing the ads,
Sure.
putting all this content together that goes together.
Mm-hmm.
You can put transitions and bookend it so it makes sense as a small
Sure.
PDF. And you could also give that away as the free lead magnet. And I have a very long lead magnet, but most of my stuff at this point is a template or one pagers. Those are really effective because value is transferred quickly. Now, to answer your question and reiterate, it's wherever you want the line to be from free to paid. And if you go on YouTube, it's another great example of you can get tons of information, free
Right.
courses on whatever you
Right.
want, really. Or I was looking the other day for CSS, and there's like free Code Academy stuff. There are, you know, 3, 4, like 20-hour courses that you could
Right.
take and be an expert in, whatever code you want to learn. Or you can enroll somewhere and pay, a couple $1,000, but it's also
Right.
available for free.
Right.
So it's across the board. So it really is completely up to you.
What do you think about how many, once I started brainstorming potential lead magnets, then it was like, oh, well, here's 60 ideas of things I could do. Like, how many things do you add to your site like that? Like, I have 370 blog posts. Is that 370 opportunities to put a lead magnet on the page? Or, if most of my visitors are new, like, it doesn't seem like it would be bad to have more. I mean, one per post, maybe. Not that I'm going to do every post, but you know, if I do 30 of these things, is that too many?
I have a email marketing course, which you just got
Mhm.
access to, I was telling
Yeah.
you before. And some of these details are in there, but
Oh,
one distinction in a new piece of vocabulary we can insert in here. So a lead magnet is some piece of free information that entices people to sign up for your email list so they get something valuable in return. A content upgrade is a kind of a specific lead magnet that is related to the specific content
okay.
for that page. So a content upgrade for the keyword golden ratio, whether it's a video or my blog post on the topic, is the spreadsheet and calculator. So that is a great lead magnet for me. It's a tool and it's a spreadsheet, and you can get it for free. And that's something I probably could have charged for, right? I could have created some sort of online
I
tool
would
and you
have
put in the
paid for that.
information.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
some
needed
people
it. I would
have
have paid for it. Yep.
some people have created tools around it and they're trying to make money from it, but I was taking the other route where I was like giving it away to get people to trust and listen to me and that sort of thing. So all that to say, you could have a content upgrade, which is the specific kind of lead magnet for each piece of content, but the fact is it'll drive you crazy. Even though
Right.
there are technical solutions to help you do that, it
Mm-hmm.
still ends up being a huge mess. So the better way to do it is to have specific lead magnets or content upgrades
Mm-hmm.
for categories of
Okay.
content.
Mm-hmm.
That way you can offer for example, I have link building information on my blog and on YouTube. So I could have a lead magnet that is 50 ways to get links
Mm-hmm.
in under 24 hours for free. That's actually a great lead magnet. And I could
I feel like I'm doing it.
put that for all of my content related to link building, potentially even related to improving rankings, because it's all interrelated, and someone that
Sure.
wants to get better rankings probably knows that they need to get more links, and that lead magnet works. So it's better just to come up with a handful, and you should prioritize it based on how much traffic you get.
Mm-hmm.
Further, you should probably prioritize it around what products you think you may have in the future. That's
Sure.
only guessing because you don't know what you're going to end up doing exactly. You may
Mm-hmm.
shift as you get more information and understand the audience more. But in essence, come up with maybe 3 or 4 of these lead magnets
Mm-hmm.
based on what categories get the most traffic. And then it's much easier to deal with. You
Okay.
only have to come up with a couple of them, and they will probably be more effective because you could focus in a little bit more on making those really high quality.
Well, and what I also thought on that while you were saying that was maybe I can use some of the MarketMuse data that I use to come up with my clusters for content sprints and be like going around those topics that it's telling me have the greatest opportunity. Maybe that's a good place to start with some of those category level lead magnets. So
Yeah,
maybe another way to use that data.
good idea. Good idea. And I think that's probably about it for lead magnet and list building. You've done a pretty good job. You mentioned to me that you have about 2,000 email subscribers and you haven't had a lead magnet. These are just people that are interested and wanted
Yeah.
to sign up.
Yeah, that was surprising. I will say that we moved to MailerLite is what I'm using for email now, and we literally just put on one pop-up when you get to the site, and that's pretty much the only way that I'm gathering addresses, but it's like 250 people a month or something insane to me. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, I feel if I do a few more intentional like list building things, then that will probably just skyrocket more so. So that's pretty exciting.
I think so, because there's a lot of people, when a general pop-up just says, hey, sign up for the email list, a lot of people are not super interested. But if they are trying to, I'll just use the example for Niche Site Project, if they're trying to improve their rankings and get links, and the pop-up says, do you want to get
Right.
50 free ideas that
Right.
you can operate on in the next 24 hours? They will say, yeah, I am very interested in that. That's literally why I came to the page.
That's a good point. So I do have, I kind of forgot this, but I do have one of those things on that pop-up that was like a save money kind of cheat sheet or ideas list. And that's literally the only thing that I built for that.
Perfect. So it's working well.
I guess
All
so.
right. Moving on to the education directory. That's what we're sort of calling it. And describe that. I thought this was a good idea.
Yeah, this is just a random idea. I don't know if it will work, but one of the things that I came up with this year was, building a course of my own takes obviously a lot of time. I don't necessarily want to wait 6 months to do anything in this arena. And what I kind of thought was, well, there's a whole lot of people in my niche that are respected and know what they're doing, and they already have a lot of educational content that is worth spending some time on and spending some dollars on. I've bought some of it. So my idea is to come up with basically an educational directory of, probably we're going to start with around 50 pieces of content that exist from other people. And we're going to run it, basically promote all of those pieces of content. I can promote it throughout the site. I can do specific courses from the directory on specific pages, kind of like we just talked about. And the goal is that each of those things that we list will also be an affiliate. So because so much of that educational content exists, a lot of those courses are on platforms that make it super easy for those folks to run affiliate programs. And so in exchange for us listing and promoting those pieces, treating them like affiliates would be just a different revenue channel for me. And it really aligns with the purpose of my site, which is educational. So it seems like a win-win. We're in the prep phase for that too, but I like the idea of it. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's perfect. This is a idea that has worked elsewhere, a lot of times. So a lot of people may note this as like a references or resources page on someone's site. On Niche Site Project, I have like tools that I use, and then I have a few courses listed, and people do different things with those types of pages, but this is very smart. It's a niche specific directory for courses and educational material, and there's no reason that the people wouldn't want you to promote or talk about it. And in some of our early discussions, I think I mentioned you could pause and not create your own courses in the short term and just sell other people's stuff. Typically that's going to pay out a hell of a lot more than Amazon or ads or whatever, because you're getting maybe like 20 to 50%.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more. Now, one thing that you maybe don't even need to do, but are there keywords related to the people's courses? So where it's like whatever the course name is and review, or this course versus that course, because you could then write content around it and have a nice content cluster related to education.
That's funny. You're like in my brain now. So that is kind of what I'm thinking. Or, perhaps I do a blog interview with each person that has a piece of content, and I can optimize that for SEO. We've done like some of those Q&A style interviews with people before, or talk about that topic and have someone do a guest post on that topic that we can then be promoting them. So I do feel like the SEO part is where my site is doing pretty well, right? Like we have a decent amount of traffic for 18 months of real work. And if I can just extend that to all the ways that I could get more traffic to those new pages, then that can only be good. So I do want to make sure that I'm not just throwing a page up on the site and then washing my hands of it and that's it. You know, if we're going to spend this much time on something, I do want to make sure that I'm getting real traffic to it. So that will definitely be a piece I want to get into.
One note that you have is around a developer and implementing this. So another one of those situations where the design is very important and you have this kind of a user experience in mind. Any details on that you can share that makes sense to bring up now?
Yeah, well, good, Doug. That's my, I mean, I do think that, yes, I do need people to kind of dial me back on that sometimes, for sure. On the flip side of that, I think that when you're starting a new blog, the way that it looks and feels can get you a lot farther when you're doing things like outreach, right? So like making sure that your site looks legit, right? And the writing is good and the design is solid and all of that, I do think makes a difference for that. So for this in particular, if I'm looking to go out and do outreach to all these people and ask them to be involved, I want what we come up with to look professional and really slick, right? I want it to look good on mobile. I want it to be fast. I want it to, be searchable, all that kind of stuff. That I want all of that and I don't want to do it. That is not my jam. I spent like 20 minutes looking at plugins and I was like, I hate my life right now. I don't want to do this. So that went on my list for, hey, you're a techie person. Would you please vet plugins or solutions for this or whatever? Here's what I'm going for. Please find me a thing. I will pay you to find me a thing and not make me do this. So that goes in that category.
Okay. And I typically, and we already talked about this, so that's fine.
You being anti-plugin?
Yeah, well, I'm anti-plugin in general, but I also like the simplest solution possible, and only if something's critical. I do appreciate having something looking professional so that when you're doing outreach, which is a topic we're going to come up or talk about in just a second here, when you have a simple solution, sometimes it's still okay, even if it's not the slicker version. And sometimes I was thinking of this today, I was out walking, and one of my first products, I didn't know how to do a pricing table. And I thought it was really important when I looked at other products out there, there was a pricing table. So I bought a pricing table plugin and it was fine. Now, it's a little easier with some of the different WordPress themes that are out there to just design it. But as I step back and look, everyone has different priorities. But when I step back, I have much simpler pricing tables. A lot of times it's not a table, it's just a column. What is the easiest thing to make it look good on mobile and not have to update things in the future and blah, blah, blah. And a lot of times it's the simpler solution. And it's usually faster to implement. You could always make it complicated later. So I always try to pull you back in, Christy. But.
Well, and to your credit, when I was chatting with this developer and I was kind of debriefing him on all my wish list items, one of them was, can you literally just go through all the plugins that I have and tell me if there's a better way to do any of those things, right? So I was channeling you. And I was basically like, there may be some things in here that I'm using a plugin for because I am not technical enough. But he may look at that and be like, well, yeah, I could totally do that with I'll make you a new category in your theme or whatever. And you can just enter stuff that way. And if that stuff exists, then it's fine. Like ditch the plugin, no problem. But, my hope is that he could look at that with fresh eyes and be like, here are all the things that you're using extra pieces for. What of those can we unplug? And I'll make you something simpler. So if those things exist, I'm totally game for it. But I do sometimes have an aesthetic in my mind. I'm like, no, it has to look like that. This is what it has to look like. So we will compromise on that. And hopefully next time I'll be able to give you an update on plugins I've taken out.
Oh, that'll be great. I
Yeah.
definitely want to get an update on
So,
that. And the thing is, and we'll move on right after this, but I have removed a few plugins and added the code myself to the PHP and
right.
some places you would need to add
Being
it.
there, I'm like, la 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 la.
And many times I don't know PHP and I don't know how to do most of the things, but you can get a snippet of code, and a lot of times you can just put that snippet of code in and it replaces a whole plugin
Right.
that is a potential security issue and other things like that. So
Not
a lot
about
of
it.
things could be hard coded in there, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't even know PHP, like I said. So moving on.
Sounding.
Moving on to outreach. What's going on with outreach right now?
Yeah, outreach has actually surprised me. Like I remember you telling me many times in like the first year, you were like, outreach kind of sucks. Most people don't do it. They don't do it because it takes forever. And I was like, wow, this sounds really great. So we definitely did slowly ramp that up. But now what I've noticed is I have one person on my team that, she's a freelancer. She helps me. She's part of my kind of industry. So she knows about my topic, but she's now doing pretty much all the outreach. And it's partially around like our diversity program. So we've been inviting more diverse voices on the blog and imagery and things like that. And then we also do, outreach for regular guest posts and other media influencers that we follow, like vlogs, podcasts, my niche. So we like to spotlight those people and then do outreach to them because we're able to then say like, here, we've highlighted you because we love what you're doing. Here's the page we made about you. And then obviously that's quite a bit of a warmer outreach scenario. And we've both noticed lately that like we're getting a lot more yeses, which is cool. And we're getting some yeses from like legit big people, which is always bonkers. Like she'll send me screenshots of emails and we're like, wowza, okay. I really didn't think we'd even hear from that person, but they're doing stuff for us. So I think that is cool. It's just something that like you really had to push me to be doing it all. And I had to come up with a way that I felt like I could package that outreach effort. But now that we have that, like it's clicking. So that's pretty cool.
Perfect. And you're not specifically asking for links. You're really just doing.
I never ask for links unless like someone writes a post and then we're like, please link back to it.
Okay. And are you specifically getting links from people, or is it more about the relationship building?
So it's more about the content for now. So we ask people for either to write like a Q&A type post with us, like we can send them some questions, or in one case for one of the big name folks that we just had engage with us, he's really busy, obviously. And so he was kind of like, yeah, I'd love to do something for you, but I probably can't sit down and write something. So we were like, hey, like you have a vlog. That's why we reached out to you in the first place. If you would rather us send you some questions and you do a vlog about it, we'll then take that vlog, like you post it on your channel, obviously. We'll also post it in a blog on our page and translate it and do a translation and put all that content into making a blog post for you, essentially. So finding creative ways like that is good. But we've been able to just kind of give people multiple options of ways to contribute. And then if someone writes a post for us or things like that, then we say, hey, here are some social graphics you can use to promote it. Like we try to give them all the tools. But I've never like reached out to people and just been like, hey, here's a piece of content you might like. Do you want to link to it? I've never done that. So I know you can do that. We've just never done that.
Right. And I think at the level that you're now operating at, where you are getting the big names, it's probably something you could do, right? Just ask for links from smaller people. But the cool thing is you're not asking for anything, and that's probably why it's working, other than, a little cross promotion. and they can see the value in that, and they can see that you have a professional
Mhm.
looking site. So I believe opportunities will probably arise in the future that
Mhm.
you couldn't plan on, and you definitely could not get if you were
Sure.
coming in trying to ask for a link like a lot of people do.
Right. Well, and I think the biggest thing that's helped us is to try to give something before we ask anyone for their time. Right. So specifically for like people with vlogs or, podcasts, these are vlogs and podcasts I actually watch. And, I'm an actual reader or viewer of their info. So, us doing a spotlight post about their blog or blog, like we're putting in that sweat equity first without asking for anything. And then we're letting them know that that is there and we love what they're doing. And that's just a much nicer way to have a relationship with someone than just being like, hi, we're new. Can you give us some stuff?
Mm-hmm.
It's not really the vibe we want. So that's worked out really well so far.
Awesome. Moving on, and we should have put these in different order. So what's something that's not working out that great? Let's talk about that. High tech
Um, yeah.
stuff. You had a kind of an idea. Lay out what your idea was and how it's going.
I had such a grand plan. The problem is, Doug, that you are like a content machine. And so you give this illusion that it's so easy to make so much content, and it's not, it turns out. So, yeah, I had this grand idea. I still like the idea of basically, pulling out a bunch of products, like tons of people do product reviews for every niche on the planet. I was like, well, we could do that for my niche. But I want to do them, in like a fun, nice series kind of way. And what I've noticed from trying to get the first one live is it's taking me for freaking ever. Like it's one product, right? But it involves like me making a couple short videos about it and me writing about the features and I'm just like, this is insane. Like the amount of time I've already put into one post that I haven't even launched yet is ridiculous. So I am definitely recalibrating on that one. Because in my grand like 2021 mindset in December, I was like, I'm gonna knock out like 5 of these bad boys every month of the year. Like it's gonna be a 60-part series by the end of 2021. And it's like February 17th. And I am like struggle busing with the first one. So yeah, that's gonna take some time. I think what I found is I don't like doing video. I don't like doing it. It's not my thing. It's not fast for me, right? Like so I'm going to now start by delegating one app review. That is my new goal. And I'm going to see if someone else can write about it. And if that goes well, then I will use that as my template and we will press on. But yeah, I've just like, it's been a real struggle because I just dig into one thing and I'm like, this has been like weeks that I've had this thing open on my computer. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, Doug would have done this yesterday. It's insane. So, yeah, not everything is going great.
Gotcha.
It's not going as great.
And it's very unlike you to have an open loop out there like this.
I know, right? It's bothering me. It's bothering me. I'm not getting an A+ on that series right now.
Well, I like what you've done, and surely you've had struggles before. So I mean,
I've literally never had a struggle before, Doug. I don't know what to do in this circumstance.
what you
Yeah.
did for people that didn't exactly catch it. So you realized you were not enthusiastic about it, and then you also realized the magnitude of the work that you would have to do was more. So you're readjusting and you pivoted a little bit to stick with it.
And sometimes I think there are projects I've found that I spend a ridiculous amount of time on, but if I give them to someone else and it's like a completely fresh thing for them, like it's just done like that. Right. And I have those things for other people. That is why people hire me for things, right? In my other business, like that's the point. Those are things they don't want to do or can't do. And they give them to me and I'm like, no problem. This is great. I'll do it. It's not a big deal. I just need to find the person that feels that way about this thing and then work with them on it, because it turns out that this thing is not one of those things for me. So I'm just being, super honest about it now. It turns out not to be one of those easy things for me.
I would be fine. And of course, it's completely up to you, but it's great to cut things out. So I know I don't really do resolutions each year or set goals for the year or
Right.
anything like that, especially now. Now I'm just
Right.
trying to cruise.
Yep.
But I think it's great to just cut it out. And maybe that's something you could look at. Hey,
Right.
just punt it and maybe look at it
Right.
again next year,
Mhm.
because the fact is, like, just doing courses takes
Yeah.
a shitload of time.
Yeah. Mhm. And it's also something where I thought, well, you know what? There's maybe one site out there about this topic that maybe I just put them on the acquisition list and I do outreach to them, and that's how I start. And if they turn out to want to sell to me, then great, that gives me a head start, but maybe building it from scratch isn't in the cards this year, and I just have to deal.
Right. Well, and the other thing is, you mentioned video, and I think the idea for, anyone out there to do a YouTube channel
Mhm.
and do reviews or really niche down to an area. One thing that I've been watching videos on, which I don't even do, right?
Mhm.
So people watch things that they're not even a participant in,
Right.
but it's RV transformations, or
This
people will build their custom
is what you're into
RV.
now?
I, I don't know how YouTube knows
You're
you
like, I don't
so
know what's
well.
happening.
Yeah. So I saw a couple videos, and part of it is like the van life movement and
Yeah.
things like that, which I'm a kind of a homebody.
Right.
I'm not planning on doing anything like that. But
Right.
I think I in the past, currently, I've had friends who were kind of
Mhm.
nomadic, and
I had a
they
tiny home phase. I feel you on this.
it's very interesting people, and they're doing things a little bit differently, which that maybe is the great
That's
crossover.
probably what we like. Yeah.
They've checked out. So the whole point being, I've seen people have these smaller channels like blow up in a
Mhm.
year and have 60,000 subscribers, and now they're basically making a full-time income, and they're
Right.
kind of understanding what they put together. So it's definitely possible. But if it's like, pushing a boulder uphill, it's not your
Oh,
thing, because video is really hard. And
why is it
thanks for the
so hard?
compliment you gave me with pushing out content. But
Yes,
I worked,
make it so easy. It's just unattainable.
watch my early
Anyway.
videos. They're a mess.
Okay. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll feel better.
So we could look at that in a little
Maybe I
while.
maybe I just move it down the road. Maybe I just
Yeah.
can't. Yeah, maybe I just can't deal with it right away.
Quitting things early is a really good idea.
Yes, I agree. I agree. I'm a big fan of the fail faster strategy.
Okay, let's start wrapping her up here. And I think we can just see if you have any open questions or things that we didn't cover in the specific sections.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's maybe just your opinions on how and what I'm delegating. I'm kind of curious about if you think that the things that I've said, like I'm getting help with, are good uses of someone else's time versus mine. Like in my mind, I'm trying to see like if I can start a project and then hand it off, that's probably best because there are things on our list that kind of only I can do, but there are kind of lines for that I don't know whether I should be crossing them. For example, I have someone now that can put a new post into WordPress for me. Like that's new for me to give up the reins for. I know you've been doing that forever and it's hard for me. So anyway, I'm doing that now, which is great. But I'm stopping short of having anyone else do like Amazon linking, like affiliate links and stuff like that. Like, do you let people into your platforms for that stuff? Like, how do you do that? Do you do that? Should I keep that? So that's kind of just one question I've been going back and forth on this week.
Sure. For that specific example, as far as delegating the Amazon links,
Mhm.
the answer is yes. And I have different agencies that work with me, and I literally set them up with an editor and author role on
Oh,
WordPress, and then they're able
sure.
to insert the links. I'm either using a tool called Amalinks Pro or Lasso,
Oh, so
depending
they're
on the
doing it
site.
through WordPress instead of like the way that I'm doing it directly with Amazon.
Yes,
Oh,
but in the past, I have just used the Amazon format.
hmm.
So there's a specific
Oh, right,
format for the link
right.
where you just have the ASIN,
Hmm.
which is the product number, and then your tracking ID, and then I would have the user, uh,
Hmm.
the
Sure.
writer, the editor, put in the link and use my tracking code, and then before I hit publish, I would just double check and make sure they put in the right one. And by the way, I've heard of some people getting not tricked, but their
Mhm.
writer put in their own tracking code. And if they
Right.
didn't change that, which I've had probably thousands of articles published by other people, I never had it once. I always double checked.
No, I don't imagine that that would happen, but I guess it could.
Yeah. But the good thing is with the tools that I mentioned, Amalinks Pro,
Mhm.
Lasso, you just put in your tracking code one time, and then or you may have a couple in there that you can choose to use, but I think that's totally fine to delegate the Amazon link building. You should, even when you're delegating, you should have a look before you hit publish,
Sure. Yep.
personally.
Agreed. Okay. Yeah. So I think that's just kind of the new balance for the year of, I have a lot that I want to do. And so what things can I keep myself and what things should I not keep myself? Just, yeah, just an evolution. But
Yeah,
for the most part, like I feel like it's still a bit in the prep work phase for a lot of these things, but I like the direction that it's going. So feeling optimistic.
perfect. And one other thing I wanted to mention around or ask you around the product. So to make sure I got it right, you have a template in place, sort of a draft template. You provided information to one of your contractors
Mhm.
who is going to populate it, and you'll have a thing to
Right.
sell. What's the timeline on that right now?
It should be, I believe the content should be back to me by the end of the month. So pretty soon. My goal is to get something out there in March. It'll take a little while for me just because I told her, when I gave it to her, like, we haven't done this before. I don't know how long it'll take. I don't know how much to pay you. I put in this much for now, but track your time and tell me if that's like completely off because I want it to be obviously fair to her. It's a bigger piece. And then I'll need to kind of rework the layout a little bit, make sure that everything that she gives me fits in there nicely. But ideally, come, this time in March, we'll have something for sale for the first time, which is good.
Okay. So we may need to do a mid-month check-in in a couple weeks. And just off the top of my head, I know before you sell something, you should prep the audience. You
Mhm.
shouldn't just say, hey, buy this thing. And you kind of have to nurture them and let them know it's coming. So there's a couple things we need to think about there. And of course, we have pricing to think about. We also have to deliver it somehow and get paid. Do you have that solution in place yet, or that's yet to
That
come?
was on the developer wish list too. Tools
Okay.
for digital and, whatever kinds of products I want to sell in the future. So
Okay.
again, I did like 20 minutes of Googling and then my brain exploded. So,
Okay. So one thing that we can also, we'll take it offline here in a second, but I highly encourage you to use some of there's solutions out there,
mhm.
and there's a couple great ones, and it's really good knowing where you're moving and the things that you will be doing in the future. It may be easier to get something a little bigger than you need in the
Sure.
short term, knowing that you won't have to transition,
I
or
Yeah, I don't
even
want to switch.
even worse, you're going to end up, because what you just described, you may have a solution for one thing here and another
Right.
piece here and multiple integrations. And that's the world that I just came from. And since
Yeah.
you know tech, and you know that even though they say things integrate, it's in the
Right.
real world, it's different.
Right. I don't want a tech stack on my blog. I just want to deliver some PDFs. That's really what I want. So yeah,
Perfect.
totally open to your advice on that for sure.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me today, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Yeah, I'll keep you posted.